The fluorescent lights in Chicago Memorial's pediatric wing buzzed with the kind of persistent hum that burrowed into your skull after a 12-hour shift. My feet ached in the sensible white sneakers I'd bought on clearance 3 months ago. The left one, developing a hole near the toe that I kept meaning to replace but couldn't quite afford yet. I moved through the hallway with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd been doing this for 6 years. Checking charts, adjusting IV drips, offering smiles to worried parents who looked like they hadn't slept in days. I understood that exhaustion intimately. It lived in my bones, settled in the dark circles under my eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Room 304 needed vitals checked. Room 307 was due for medication. Room 311 had a little boy recovering from appendicitis whose mother kept crying every time she thought no one was watching. I'd brought her coffee twice already, the cheap stuff from the nurse's station, but she'd gripped my hand like I'd offered her salvation. Maya, Teresa called from the nurse's station, her voice carrying that particular tone that meant something had gone wrong. Again, Dr. Patterson needs you in his office. My stomach dropped. Conversations in Dr. Patterson's office were never good. They were about budget cuts, mandatory overtime, or worse, overdue bills that the hospital couldn't ignore anymore. I found him behind his desk, glasses perched on his nose, looking older than his 53 years. The lines around his eyes had deepened since I'd started here, carved by too many impossible decisions and not enough funding. Maya. He gestured to the chair across from him. Sit down. If this is about the Herrera account, I'm making payments. $50 every paycheck, just like we agreed. It's not about that. He removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Though we do need to discuss increasing that amount. Your mother's treatment costs have exceeded what her insurance covers by nearly $32,000. The number hit like a physical blow. $32,000. I made $38,000 a year before taxes. I'm doing everything I can. I picked up extra shifts. I know you are. His expression softened. You're one of the best pediatric nurses we have, Maya. The kids love you. The parents request you specifically. But the billing department is putting pressure on me. They want a payment plan that actually makes a dent in the balance. How much? $500 a month. Minimum. I did the math automatically. Rent was $1,400 for my studio in Little Italy. Student loans took another $300. Utilities, groceries, gas for my ancient Honda that barely started most mornings. $500 more would leave me with maybe $200 for everything else. I'll figure it out, I heard myself say, though I had no idea how. Doctor. Patterson's expression said he didn't believe me but was too kind to argue. You have until the end of the month. After that, it goes to collections, and I can't protect you from that. The walk back to the pediatric wing felt longer than usual. My mother had multiple sclerosis, the aggressive kind that had stolen her mobility, her independence, her ability to remember my name on bad days. The experimental treatment we'd tried had bought her 6 good months before the disease roared back with renewed fury. Now she lived in a care facility that cost more than I made, sustained by medications that insurance deemed not medically necessary, despite the fact that they kept her alive. I was drowning. Had been drowning for 3 years, ever since my father's life insurance ran out and the reality of chronic illness revealed itself in all its crushing financial weight. Rough meeting? Teresa asked when I returned to the station. The usual. I forced a smile. What do we have left? Just the new admit and 318. 4-year-old girl, brought in for evaluation. Parents are concerned about developmental delays and some behavioral issues. Dr. Chen wants a full workup. I grabbed the chart, scanning the details. Isabella Catalano, 4 years old. Parents reported she hadn't spoken in over a year, showed extreme sensitivity to sounds and touch, engaged in repetitive behaviors, possible autism spectrum disorder. The father's name caught my eye, Dante Catalano. Even I, who paid zero attention to Chicago's underworld, knew that name. Everyone did. The Catalano family controlled the South Side, ran operations that polite society pretended not to know about. Shipping, they called it officially. Import and export. My hand trembled slightly as I approached room 318. Men like Dante Catalano didn't bring their children to public hospitals. They had private doctors, specialists, who made house calls. The fact that he was here meant something had gone very wrong. I knocked softly before entering. The room was dim, curtains drawn against the afternoon sun. A little girl sat on the bed, wearing pink pajamas covered in butterflies. Dark curls fell past her shoulders, and her hands moved in constant motion, fingers twisting and untwisting a piece of medical tape. She didn't look up when I entered, didn't acknowledge my presence at all, but the man standing by the window did. Dante Catalano was taller than I'd expected from the photos I'd seen in newspapers. Easily 6'3", with broad shoulders that filled out his black suit like it had been tailored specifically for him, because it probably had been. Dark hair swept back from a face that was all sharp angles and harder edges, a jaw that could cut glass, and eyes so dark they appeared black in the shadowed room. He assessed me in a single sweep, not leering, calculating, like he was determining my value, my threat level, my potential usefulness. The intensity of his gaze made my skin prickle with awareness I didn't want to name. Mr. Catalano. I kept my voice professional, warm. I'm Maya Santos, one of the pediatric nurses. I'll be helping with Isabella's evaluation today. He nodded once. A sharp, controlled gesture that conveyed acknowledgement without warmth. I moved toward the bed slowly, making myself small and non-threatening. Hi, Isabella. My name is Maya. I'm going to be spending some time with you today. Is that okay? No response. Her fingers continued their rhythmic movement, twisting the tape into increasingly complex patterns. She won't answer you, Dante said, his voice low, rough around the edges. An accent I couldn't quite place wove through his words. Italian, maybe. She hasn't spoken in 13 months. That's all right. I pulled up a chair beside the bed, positioning myself at Isabella's eye level. Communication happens in lots of ways, she's telling me. Things right now without saying a word. His expression shifted, skepticism mixed with desperate hope. What is she telling you? That the tape's texture is soothing. That repetitive motion helps her regulate when the environment feels overwhelming. I watched Isabella's hands, the precise way she folded and unfolded. That she's very intelligent and needs specific kinds of input to feel safe. Something cracked in Dante's carefully controlled facade. Raw vulnerability bled through for just a moment before he buried it again. The doctors we've seen, they say she's broken, that something inside her doesn't work right. Anger flared hot in my chest. She's not broken. She's autistic. There's a difference. Autistic. He tested the word like it was foreign. They mentioned that. Said it explains why she doesn't talk, why she can't handle loud noises or being touched, why she does the same things over and over. It explains how her brain processes the world differently. I corrected gently. Not better or worse, just different. And there are ways to support her, to help her communicate and thrive. I reached into my scrub pocket, pulling out a small sensory fidget I kept for anxious kids, a smooth stone with a satisfying weight. I placed it on the bed near Isabella, not touching her, just offering. Her eyes flicked toward it. Dark brown, like her father's, but holding a depth that seemed to see everything at once. After a long moment, her hand darted out, fingers closing around the stone. She brought it to her cheek, rubbing the cool surface against her skin. A small sound escaped her lips. Not quite a hum, not quite a sigh. Contentment wrapped in a single note. She likes it, Dante breathed, moving closer. She's never... He stopped, unable to finish. Sensory input, I explained. The smooth texture and weight provide the kind of feedback her nervous system craves. It's calming. I began humming softly while Isabella explored the stone. An old melody my abuela used to sing, passed down through generations of Santos women. Simple, repetitive, soothing. Isabella's hands stilled. Not completely, but the frantic quality eased. Her body, which had been rigid with tension, softened incrementally. "What are you doing?" Dante asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Music is pattern," I said quietly, still humming. "Pattern is predictable. Predictable is safe. For a child whose world feels chaotic and overwhelming, safe is everything." I transitioned from humming to soft words, making up lyrics about butterflies and smooth stones and quiet places. Isabella's gaze found mine for the first time. Direct eye contact that lasted maybe 3 seconds before she looked away. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. But it was enough. Dante made a sound like he'd been struck. "She looked at you." She did. "She hasn't made eye contact with anyone since her." His voice broke. "Since her mother died." The grief in those words hit me square in the chest. I kept singing. Kept, making myself a safe, predictable presence, while this little girl who'd lost her mother tried to decide if the world was worth engaging with again. When? I asked gently between verses. 14 months ago. Car accident. Each word was clipped, controlled. One moment she was here, singing to Isabella before bed. The next, he turned away, shoulders rigid. Isabella stopped talking the next day, stopped looking at people, stopped letting anyone touch her except me, and even that's difficult. I understood grief intimately. It had teeth. It devoured everything soft and left you with edges sharp enough to cut anyone who got too close. "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. "That's not enough time for either of you." "No." He turned back, and something in his expression had shifted. The calculating assessment was gone, replaced by naked desperation. "The doctors say she's regressing, that if we don't intervene now, she might never speak again, never connect with people, never have a bride. Normal life, Mr. Catalano." "Dante," he interrupted. "If you can make my daughter look at you, you can call me by my name." "Dante," I amended. "There's no such thing as normal. There's only what works for each individual person. Isabella can have a full, rich, meaningful life. It might look different than what you expected, but that doesn't make it less valuable." I continued singing, watching Isabella's small body relax further into the hospital bed. Her fingers still moved, still needed that constant input, but the quality had changed, from frantic to purposeful. "She responds to you," Dante said after a long moment. "In 20 minutes, you've done what specialists couldn't do in months. I haven't done anything except meet her where she is instead of demanding she come to where I am." His jaw tightened. "What's your salary here?" The question came out of nowhere, jarring in its directness. "Excuse me? Your annual salary. What does this hospital pay you?" "I don't. See how that's relevant." "Humor me. Not a request. A command wrapped in politeness. 38,000, I said, lifting my chin. 5, plus benefits." Something flickered in his dark eyes. "Not enough. Not nearly enough for someone with your skill." He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. "I'm offering you a position. Private care for Isabella. Your only job is helping her heal, develop, communicate, whatever she needs." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Mr. Catalano Dante, I can't just quit my job. I have responsibilities here. 150,000 annually." He said it like it was nothing, like that number wouldn't change my entire life. "Full health insurance that includes coverage for your mother's care. Housing provided at my estate. Whatever resources you need for Isabella's therapy and development." The number stole my breath. More than enough to pay off the hospital debt, more than enough to move my mother to a better facility, one with actual neurologists instead of rotating residents. More than enough to finally breathe. But men like Dante Catalano didn't make offers like this without strings. Chains, more accurately. "I need time to think about this. You have 24 hours. He reached into his jacket, produced a business card. Heavy cardstock, embossed lettering. Just a name and phone number. Call when you decide. Before I could respond, Isabella made a sound. Not words, but vocalization. A soft coo directed at the stone still pressed against her cheek. Dante's entire being focused on his daughter. The mask slipped completely, and I saw him as he really was. Not a dangerous man who commanded fear, but a father desperate to save his child. "Keep singing," he said roughly. "Please." So I did. I sang about butterflies and smooth stones and safe places while Isabella's eyes drifted closed. Within 10 minutes, she was asleep. One small hand still clutching the sensory stone, her breathing deep and even. Peaceful in a way Dante said she hadn't been in over a year. "She trusts you," he whispered, staring at his daughter like she was the most precious thing in existence. "In less than an hour, she trusts you." "Trust has to be earned," I said quietly. "By showing up consistently, by respecting boundaries, by making someone feel safe." His eyes met mine over Isabella's sleeping form. "Then earn mine. Take this job. Help my daughter. Name your price if the offer isn't enough. It's not about the money. Everything is about money when you don't have enough of it." His gaze held mine, unflinching. "I had you investigated the moment I saw how Isabella responded to you. I know about your mother's medical debt. I know you're drowning in bills while working 60-hour weeks. I know you haven't bought new shoes in 6 months despite the hole in your left one." Heat flooded my face. Shame and anger warring for dominance. "You had no right. I have every right when it comes to protecting my daughter. His voice went hard. I need to know who I'm trusting with the most important person in my world. And what I learned is that you're drowning, Maya Santos. I'm offering you a lifeline. In exchange for what? In exchange for saving my daughter the way you saved those kids in room 311, room 304, room 307? He moved closer, close enough that I could smell expensive cologne and something darker underneath. Power, maybe. Danger. I watched you in the hallway before I brought Isabella in. Saw how you treated every child like they mattered, every parent like their fear was valid. Saw you bring coffee to a stranger because she was crying. That's just being a decent human being. No, his voice dropped lower. That's being exceptional. And exceptional is what my daughter needs. Isabella stirred in her sleep, a small whimper escaping. Automatically, I started humming again, and she settled immediately. Dante saw it, saw the instant connection, the way his daughter responded to me like I was oxygen. 24 hours, he repeated. But I think you've already decided. He was wrong, and he was right. I stood there in that dim hospital room, watching a little girl sleep peacefully for perhaps the first time in months, holding a business card that weighed more than paper should, and felt the walls of my life closing in. $32,000 in debt, my mother fading a little more each day. This job that I loved but that was slowly killing me with its impossible demands and inadequate pay. And across from me, a dangerous man offering salvation wrapped in luxury I'd never imagined. I should have said no. Should have walked away and returned to my safe, predictable, suffocating life. But I looked at Isabella, at the peace on her small face, at the way her fingers still moved even in sleep, seeking that constant sensory input. She needed help. Real help, consistent help, from someone who understood that different didn't mean broken. And God help me, I needed to help her. I'll think about it, I managed, my voice barely steady. Dante nodded, something like satisfaction crossing his features. That's all I ask. I left the room on shaking legs, that business card burning a hole in my scrub pocket. Teresa caught my expression when I returned to the nurse's station. Everything okay? Fine, I lied. Just fine. That night, I lay in my tiny studio apartment, staring at water stains on the ceiling, turning Dante's offer over in my mind. $150,000. Housing. Insurance for my mother. All I had to do was enter the world of a man whose name appeared in news articles about organized crime. All I had to do was become responsible for a child who'd lost her mother and was drowning in grief and sensory overload. All I had to do was abandon everything I'd built here for something uncertain and dangerous and impossible. My phone rang at 2 a.m. The care facility my mother had taken a turn. Nothing life-threatening, but Dr. Morrison wanted to discuss increasing her medication dosage. Cost. An additional $1,200 monthly, not covered by insurance. I hung up and stared at Dante's business card propped against my bedside lamp. 24 hours, he'd said. But really, we both knew the choice had been made the moment Isabella looked at me with those dark eyes and decided I was safe. I called the number at dawn. He answered on the first ring. Maya, I accept your offer. Silence. Then, you won't regret this. I hoped he was right, because I'd just signed away my safe, predictable life for something that terrified me almost as much as it compelled me. But sometimes salvation requires jumping into deep water, without knowing if you'll find the bottom or learn to swim. I'd just jumped, and there was no going back. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of logistics and life-altering decisions. I submitted my resignation to Dr. Patterson, whose expression cycled through shock, concern, and finally resignation. He didn't ask where I was going, but the way his gaze lingered on me suggested he'd figured it out. Be careful, Maya, he said quietly as I cleaned out my locker. Men like that, their world isn't like ours. I know. And I did, or thought I did. Dante had arranged everything with terrifying efficiency. Movers appeared at my studio apartment, packing my meager belongings while I stood helpless in the center of the room that had been my entire world for 4 years. They handled each item with more care than I'd ever been able to afford to give them myself. My mother's transfer to Lakeshore Rehabilitation Center happened so smoothly, it felt surreal. A private ambulance, a team of specialists, a room with windows overlooking Lake Michigan instead of a parking lot. When I visited her the day before moving to Dante's estate, she was lucid enough to squeeze my hand. This place is beautiful, mija, she whispered. How? Did you? I got a new job, mama. Better pay, better benefits. Her eyes, still sharp when the disease allowed, studied my face. What kind of job requires this kind of money? Private care. For a little girl who needs help. She didn't press, but I saw the worry settle into the lines around her mouth. My mother had lived in Chicago long enough to understand that some opportunities came with invisible price tags. Sunday morning arrived gray and cold, typical for Chicago in October. The car Dante sent was black, sleek, expensive enough to make my ancient Honda look like a child's toy. The driver introduced himself as Marco, broad-shouldered, military-bearing, eyes that missed nothing. "Mr. Catalano is looking forward to your arrival, Miss Santos," he said, loading my suitcases into the trunk. The drive from Little Italy to the North Shore took 40 minutes. I watched the city transform through tinted windows, neighborhoods shifting from working class to affluent, buildings growing larger and more imposing. We passed through Evanston, then further north into Kenilworth, where homes became estates and privacy was measured in acres rather than feet. The Catalano property sat behind iron gates that swung open automatically as we approached. A long driveway wound through grounds that seemed to stretch forever. Manicured lawns, mature trees still clinging to autumn leaves, gardens that probably required a full-time staff. The mansion was modern Italian architecture. Clean lines, large windows, pale stone that glowed in the overcast morning light. Beautiful and intimidating in equal measure. "Jesus," I whispered. Marco's mouth quirked. "You get used to it." The front doors opened before we reached them. A woman stood framed in the entrance, perhaps in her 60s, with silver-threaded dark hair pulled into an elegant bun. She wore a simple black dress and pearls, her posture suggesting both authority and warmth. Miss Santos, her accent, was thicker than Dante's, purely Italian. "I am Lucia. I manage the household staff. Mr. Catalano is with Isabella, but asked me to show you to your quarters." I followed her inside, trying not to gape at the foyer that could have fit my entire apartment. Marble floors, a curved staircase, artwork that looked expensive even to my untrained eye. Everything whispered of wealth so old and established it didn't need to announce itself. "The main living areas are on the first floor," Lucia explained as we climbed. "Family bedrooms on the second, staff quarters on the third, but you'll be staying in the east wing, second floor, near Isabella's room." We reached a hallway lined with closed doors. Lucia stopped at one, pushed it open. "This will be yours." The room was 3 times the size of my studio apartment. A king bed with a charcoal duvet, a sitting area with comfortable chairs, windows overlooking the gardens, an attached bathroom visible through another door, all marble and chrome. "It's beautiful," I managed, throat tight. "Dinner is at 7. Breakfast is available from 6 to 9 in the morning." Lucia pointed to a panel near the door. "Intercom system. Press 1 for the kitchen, 2 for housekeeping, 3 for security." Security. The word settled heavy in my stomach. Isabella's room is 3 doors down. Mr. Catalano's suite is across the hall. Her tone made it clear what she thought of my presence here. Suspicion radiated from every precise word. "Please don't disturb him unless it's urgent. I'm just here to help Isabella," I said quietly. "We shall see." She turned to leave, then paused. "Mr. Catalano has been through 6 caregivers in 14 months, Miss Santos. Whatever you think you can offer, others have tried and failed." The door closed behind her, leaving me alone in my new room, surrounded by luxury I'd never imagined, working for a man I barely knew, to help a child who'd crawled into my heart in a single hour. I unpacked, slowly, hanging my scrubs in a closet that could hold 50 people's wardrobes. My clothes looked shabby against the expensive wood, reminders of the life I'd left behind. A knock interrupted my thoughts. Not Lucia's perfunctory rap, but something gentler. "Come in," I called. The door opened to reveal Dante, dressed more casually than I'd seen him. Dark jeans, a black Henley that emphasized his broad shoulders. He looked younger like this, less intimidating, almost approachable, almost. "Maya." He stepped inside, and the room suddenly felt smaller. "You're settled?" "Getting there." His gaze swept the space, checking details with the same assessing quality I remembered from the hospital. "If you need anything, tell Lucia. She can be protective of the household, but she's fair. She thinks I'll fail, like the others. She thinks everyone will fail. She thinks everyone will fail." He moved to the window, looking out at grounds painted in autumn colors. The others left because Isabella's needs overwhelmed them. because they expected her to adapt to their methods instead of adapting to her. That's not how it works with autism. I'm learning that. He turned back to me. Isabella is awake. Would you like to see her? My heart kicked against my ribs. Yes. Isabella's room was exactly what I'd expected and nothing like it. The walls were painted soft lavender, but the overhead lights had been replaced with adjustable LEDs. Blackout curtains covered the windows, giving her control over light levels. Toys were organized with military precision, each item in its designated space. And in the center of the room, sitting cross-legged on a plush rug, was Isabella. She wore purple leggings and an oversized sweater, her dark curls loose around her shoulders. Her hands moved rhythmically, stacking blocks into increasingly complex towers. She didn't look up when we entered, didn't acknowledge our presence at all. Isabella, Dante said softly. Maya is here. Remember her? From the hospital? No response. Just the continued stacking of blocks, precise and focused. I knelt on the floor a few feet away, making myself small and non-threatening. Hi, Isabella. I love your blocks. You're building something beautiful. Her hands stilled for a fraction of a second. Not much, but enough to tell me she'd heard. I began humming the same melody from the hospital, watching her from my peripheral vision. Direct eye contact could feel aggressive to autistic individuals. Better to be a safe presence in the background. After a long moment, Isabella's hand moved. She pushed a blue block toward me. Not quite an invitation, but acknowledgement, recognition. I picked up the block, feeling its weight, its smooth edges. Thank you for sharing with me. Dante watched from the doorway, his expression unreadable, but I caught the way his hands clenched at his sides, the tightness in his jaw. This man who commanded fear from others was terrified by his own daughter's silence. May, I build with you? I asked Isabella. She didn't answer, but she pushed another block in my direction. Purple this time. We built in silence for 20 minutes. No words, no pressure, just the simple act of creating something together. Isabella's towers were architectural marvels, balanced with precision that suggested both intelligence and intense focus. I made mine simpler, less ambitious, matching her energy rather than competing with it. When she finally looked at me, it was brief. A quick glance to assess my tower, then back to her own work. But it was connection. Tenuous, fragile, real. Lunch will be ready soon, Dante said eventually. Isabella, will you come eat with us? She ignored him completely. Didn't even pause in her building. I saw the flash of pain across his face before he buried it. She doesn't eat regular meals, he explained, voice tight. Grazes throughout the day. Texture sensitivities make most foods intolerable. What does she like? Plain pasta. Chicken nuggets from exactly one brand. Apple slices. Crackers with no seasoning. He rattled off the list with the weariness of someone who'd had this conversation 100 times. The nutritionist says she's borderline malnourished, but forcing her to eat causes meltdowns that last hours. I nodded, still humming softly. Food can be traumatic when textures feel wrong. The mouth is incredibly sensitive. What feels normal to us might feel like sandpaper or slime to her. How do we fix it? We don't fix her, Dante. We support her. I kept my voice gentle. We expand her diet slowly, introduce new textures through play before asking her to eat them. We make food safe instead of stressful. Something cracked in his expression. Everyone else said I was spoiling her, that I needed to be firm, set boundaries, make her eat what's offered. Everyone else was wrong. I met his eyes directly. Isabella's world is overwhelming enough. Meals should be a safe space, not a battlefield. He stared at me for a long moment, then nodded once, sharp and decisive. Show me. Whatever you need, whatever approach you want to try, you have complete authority over her care. The trust implicit in those words felt massive, dangerous. This man who trusted no one was handing me his daughter's well-being without reservation. I'll need time, I warned. Weeks, maybe months. Progress will be slow. I've waited 14 months for her to look at me the way she looked at you in the hospital. His voice went rough. I can wait longer if it means she heals. The first week was adjustment. Learning the rhythms of the household, understanding Isabella's routines, observing how she moved through her world. Dante had been right about previous caregivers. They'd tried to impose structure rather than finding the structure Isabella naturally created for herself. She woke at exactly 6:30 every morning, required 17 minutes alone in her room before she could tolerate interaction, Needed 3 specific songs played in order during breakfast. Would only wear clothes with tags removed and seams that didn't press against her skin. These weren't quirks to be corrected. They were accommodations her nervous system required to function. I documented everything, building a comprehensive picture of Isabella's needs. Lucia watched with barely concealed skepticism, but I caught her nodding approval when I successfully predicted a meltdown before it happened and redirected Isabella's attention. Dante observed from a distance, present but careful not to interfere. He'd arrived for breakfast, dressed in suits that probably cost more than I used to make in a month, and watch his daughter eat her plain pasta with an expression that broke my heart. "She used to eat everything," he said one morning after Isabella had returned to her room. We sat alone at the massive dining table, coffee cooling between us. Maria, my wife, she'd cook these elaborate Italian meals. Isabella would try everything, laugh when sauce got on her face. "Trauma changes the nervous system," I said gently. Losing her mother was catastrophic. Her brain went into survival mode, and part of survival is controlling what you can. Food, routine, sensory input, these are things she can control when everything else feels chaotic. Will she ever be the way she was before? The hope in his voice was painful. She'll be whoever she becomes. Maybe that looks like before, maybe it doesn't, but she'll be whole either way. He studied me over the rim of his coffee cup. "You're different than I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone more clinical, cold, focused on treatment protocols and measurable outcomes." He set down his cup. "You treat her like a person, not a problem to solve. Because she is a person, a whole, complete person who processes the world differently." "Maya." The way he said my name sent an unwelcome shiver down my spine. "Thank you for seeing her that way." I should have deflected, maintained professional distance. Instead, I found myself asking, what was she like before? His expression softened, grief and love mingling. Bright. So bright it hurt to look at her sometimes. She'd narrate everything, ask 1,000 questions about why the sky was blue or where birds slept. Maria used to joke that Isabella would talk us to death before she turned 5. "She sounds wonderful." She was. They both were. He looked away, jaw tight. Maria had this way of making everything an adventure. Grocery shopping became treasure hunting. Bath time was underwater expeditions. She made our home feel alive. How did she die? The question was too personal, too invasive. But Dante answered anyway. Hit and run. 2 a.m, coming back from her sister's house in Oak Park. The driver never stopped, never called for help. His hands curled into fists. She died on the side of the road while Isabella slept safely at a home. Not knowing her world was ending. My throat tightened. "I'm sorry." The police called it an accident. Random. Wrong place, wrong time. His voice went cold, hard. "I know better." The implication hung heavy between us. Not an accident. Something deliberate, targeted. The first real acknowledgement of the darkness underlying his world. "Dante, Isabella needs you," he interrupted, standing abruptly. "That's all that matters. Not the past. Not how we got here, just helping her find her way back." He left before I could respond, his coffee untouched, shoulders rigid with barely contained emotion. That afternoon I took Isabella to the gardens. Lucia had protested too unpredictable, too many variables, but I'd insisted. Isabella needed more than the controlled environment of her room. She needed to feel sun on her skin, hear birds singing, experience the world beyond 4 walls. We moved slowly, letting Isabella set the pace. She stopped frequently, examining leaves, watching how light filtered through trees, listening to sounds I couldn't identify. Her face remained mostly expressionless, but I was learning to read the subtle signs. The slight relaxation in her shoulders meant contentment. The tightening around her eyes meant overstimulation. After 20 minutes, she sat on the grass and began arranging fallen leaves by size. I sat nearby, giving her space but remaining present. "Your daddy loves you very much," I said softly, continuing my practice of narrating to her even when she didn't respond. "He misses your mama too. You both miss her, and that's okay. Missing people we love means they mattered." Isabella's hand stilled. For 3 heartbeats, she was completely motionless. Then, so quietly I almost missed it. "Mama." The word was barely a whisper, rusty from disuse, but it was a word, a real, spoken word. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Yes, sweetheart. Mama." She loved you so much. Isabella's eyes filled with tears. Not the explosive emotion of a meltdown, but something quieter, deeper. Grief that had been locked inside for 14 months finally finding release. I moved closer slowly, telegraphing my intention. "Can I sit next to you?" She didn't respond verbally, but she didn't move away. I settled beside her, close but not touching. We sat like that for a long time, Isabella crying silent tears while I hummed the same melody I'd sung in the hospital. When the tears finally stopped, she leaned sideways. Just slightly, just enough that her shoulder pressed against my arm. The lightest contact, but deliberate. Permission granted. I wrapped my arm around her small body, and she didn't pull away, didn't stiffen or retreat. Just sat there, letting herself be held while the October wind scattered leaves around us. That's where Dante found us 20 minutes later. His expression when he saw Isabella tucked against my side, calm and accepting of physical contact, was something I'd remember forever. Wonder, and pain and desperate gratitude all tangled together. She spoke. I mouthed to him over Isabella's head. His knees actually buckled. He caught himself against a nearby tree, one hand pressed to his chest like his heart had stopped. What did she say? "Mama." The single word shattered him. I watched it happen in real time. Watched the careful control he maintained fracture completely. Tears spilled down his face, and he made no move to hide them. Isabella noticed her father's distress. She pulled away from me, standing on unsteady legs, and walked to him. Small arms wrapped around his waist, her face pressed against his stomach. Dante dropped to his knees, gathering his daughter into his arms and sobbing like his soul was breaking. "Mi amore, mi principessa," he chanted in Italian, between broken breaths. Ti amo tanto." I looked away, giving them privacy in this moment of raw emotion, but I heard it all the years of grief and fear and helpless love pouring out in a garden where leaves fell like tears, and a little girl who hadn't spoken in 14 months chose to come back to the world. When Dante finally composed himself, Isabella had fallen asleep in his arms. Exhausted by emotion, by the effort of opening a door that had been sealed shut, he carried her inside, and I followed silently. Lucia waited in the foyer, her sharp eyes taking in Dante's tear-stained face, Isabella sleeping peacefully in his arms. She spoke, Dante told her, voice rough. Maya made her speak. Lucia's gaze swung to me, assessment shifting to something almost like respect. "What you have done in 1 week, others could not do in months. Perhaps I judged too quickly." "I haven't done anything," I said honestly. "Isabella is doing the work. I'm just making it safe for her to try." That night, after Isabella was settled and the household had quieted, I stood on my balcony watching stars emerge over the North Shore. The lake stretched dark and endless beyond the property, holding secrets and promises in equal measure. A knock interrupted my solitude. Dante, still dressed despite the late hour, holding 2 glasses of wine. "I thought you might want company," he said. "Or if you'd rather be alone. Company is fine." I accepted a glass, our fingers brushing in the exchange. An accidental touch that sent electricity racing up my arm. We stood in comfortable silence, sipping wine that probably cost more than I used to make in a week. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of approaching winter. "Thank you," Dante said eventually. "For today, for every day this week, for seeing what others couldn't. You don't need to keep thanking me. It's my job." "No." He set down his glass, turning to face me fully. "The job is why you're here. But what you're doing, the way you see Isabella, the way you help her without trying to change her, that's not something you can pay someone to do. That comes from who you are." The intensity in his gaze made my breath catch. "Dante, I know this is complicated," he continued. "I know my world is dangerous. I know you probably lie awake at night wondering what you've gotten yourself into." He paused. "But I want you to know that you're safe here. Isabella is safe. Whatever darkness exists in my life, it doesn't touch this house." The promise felt genuine. It also felt like a lie we both needed to believe. "What do you do, Dante?" The question escaped before I could stop it. "Really do?" His expression shuddered immediately. "I run import and export operations. Legitimate businesses passed down through my family. And the other businesses? The ones that require armed security and make people whisper your name like it's dangerous?" For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then, "Have you seen anything illegal in this house?" "No." "Has anyone threatened you or made you feel unsafe?" "No." "Then that's all you need to know." His voice went hard. "I protect what's mine, Maya. ensure my family's interests are secured. The methods I use, they're not always pretty, but they're necessary. It wasn't an answer. It was a warning wrapped in charm. I should have pressed, should have demanded real transparency. Instead, I found myself nodding, accepting this non-answer because the alternative was acknowledging that I'd walked into something far more dangerous than I'd imagined. Dante's hand came up, fingers brushing my cheek with devastating gentleness. "You're changing everything," he whispered. "My daughter is speaking because of you, laughing, living again. And he stopped, seemed to catch himself. "Don't make me care more than I already do. It's dangerous for both of us." My heart hammered so hard I was certain he could hear it. "Then don't." Too late. His thumb traced my jaw, tilted my chin up. Our faces were inches apart. I could see gold flecks in his dark eyes, feel the heat radiating off his body. I told myself this was just business, that I was hiring help for Isabella, nothing more. "But the way you look at me, the way you see past everything I show the world." He leaned in. I stopped breathing. His lips were almost touching mine when he suddenly stepped back. The separation, physical pain. "No," he said roughly. "You work for me. You're here for Isabella. I won't complicate that. You deserve better than what I can offer." Before I could respond, before I could tell him I didn't want better, didn't want safe, wanted this impossible thing building between us, he turned and walked away, leaving me alone on the balcony with wine I could no longer taste and lips aching for a kiss that would never come. I went to bed that night tangled in confusion. This job was supposed to be simple. Help Isabella. Save my mother. Get my life back on track. Instead, I was falling for a man whose world was built on violence I didn't understand. Getting attached to a child who was slowly breaking down walls 14 months in the making. Stepping deeper into shadows I couldn't see but felt pressing in from all sides. 3 weeks in, and I was already in too deep to find my way back to the surface. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, it felt inevitable. Like I'd been drowning my whole life and was only now learning there was another way to breathe. 2 months passed like water through fingers. October bled into November, then December arrived with Chicago's particular brand of bitter cold. The Catalano estate transformed under the first snow, becoming something out of a winter fairy tale. But fairy tales had monsters, and I was beginning to understand exactly what kind of monster Dante Catalano was. Isabella bloomed under consistent care and patient understanding. She spoke now not constantly, not in the endless stream of questions Dante remembered from before, but real words. Yes, and no, and hungry, and occasionally my name. "Maya," she'd say, tugging my hand toward her room, toward the garden, toward whatever had captured her attention. The first time she laughed, really laughed, Dante had stopped mid-conversation with Adriano and stared like he'd witnessed a miracle. His brother had smiled, rare and genuine, and clapped Dante on the shoulder. "She's coming back," Adriano had said. "Your Maya is bringing her back. Your Maya." The words had settled in my chest like stones, heavy and uncomfortable and impossible to dislodge, because somewhere between the first week and the second month, I'd stopped being just Isabella's caregiver. I'd become part of the fabric of this household, woven into routines and rhythms I hadn't planned. Breakfast with Dante while Isabella ate her carefully selected foods. Evening walks through the gardens while he pointed out constellations and told stories about growing up in Sicily. Late nights in the library where we'd talk about everything and nothing until the sky began to lighten. We never discussed the almost kiss on the balcony, but it lived between us, present in every accidental touch, every lingering glance, every moment when the air grew heavy with things neither of us dared to say. The warning signs were there. I'd been too willfully blind to see them. Men in expensive suits arriving after dark, their postures suggesting violence held barely in check. Conversations in rapid Italian that stopped the moment I entered a room. The way Dante's entire demeanor would shift during phone calls, his voice dropping to something cold and commanding that made my spine straighten instinctively. And the security. God, the security. Marco and 3 others patrolled the grounds constantly. Armed with weapons they no longer bothered to conceal around me. Cameras monitored every angle of the property. The gates required biometric scans to open. "It's excessive," I'd told Lucia one afternoon while Isabella napped. Her expression had been pitying. "It is necessary. Men like Mr. Catalano, they have enemies. People who would hurt what? They love to hurt them." "What does that mean?" "It means Isabella is precious. And now, so are you." The words had sent ice down my spine, but I'd pushed the fear aside. buried it under the weight of Isabella's progress, and my mother's improved health, and the dangerous thing growing between Dante and me. Until the night everything shattered. It started with a phone call. 3 a.m, my room still dark, the house silent except for the distant hum of the heating system. I fumbled for my phone, heart already racing because nothing good happened at 3 a.m. Maya, Dante's voice, tight with barely controlled fury. I need you. Now. Isabella's room. I was moving before he finished speaking, pulling on my robe and racing down the hall. The door to Isabella's room stood open, light spilling into the corridor. Inside, Dante held his daughter while she sobbed, her small body shaking with the kind of terror that had no words. What happened? I dropped to my knees beside. Nightmare. The worst she's had since you arrived. His jaw was clenched so tight I worried he'd crack teeth. She woke up screaming for Maria, for her mother. Wouldn't let me touch her at first. Isabella's cries were wordless now, raw sounds of distress that tore at something fundamental in my chest. I began humming immediately, the same melody that had connected us that first day in the hospital. Her crying hitched, not stopping but shifting, recognition breaking through panic. Let me try, I said softly to Dante. He released his daughter reluctantly, and Isabella immediately reached for me. I gathered her into my arms, rocking slowly, humming that song her mother had sung. Gradually, incrementally, the sobs eased. Mama's gone, Isabella whispered against my neck. Her first complex sentence in over a year. She's gone and she's never coming back. The grief in those words was enormous, ancient, the kind that reshapes your entire world. I know, sweetheart. And that's not fair. You should still have her. I want her back. The words were muffled, broken. I want Mama. Dante made a sound like he'd been struck, his hands fisted at his sides, and I saw him struggling with emotions too large for his body to contain. Helplessness, rage, desperate love with nowhere to go. I know you do. I kept my voice steady despite the tears burning my eyes. Your mama loved you so much, Isabella. So much. And she's not here anymore, and that hurts. It's okay to hurt. Why did she leave? She didn't want to leave. Sometimes bad things happen that we can't control. I rocked her gently. But your daddy is here, and I'm here, and we love you. We're not going anywhere. Promise? The word was so small, so fragile. I looked at Dante over Isabella's head. His expression was raw, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. He nodded once, giving me permission to make a promise we both knew might be impossible to keep. I promise, I whispered, sealing my fate. It took an hour to settle Isabella back to sleep. Dante and I stayed with her, taking turns singing songs and telling stories until her breathing evened out and her small hand relaxed its grip on my robe. We moved into the hallway, careful to leave her door open. Dante looked destroyed, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled, his eyes red-rimmed and haunted. I should have protected her better, he said hoarsely. Should have kept Maria safe, should have seen it coming. Dante, you can't control everything, can't I? His voice went hard, bitter. I control ports, shipping routes, territories across 3 states. I decide who lives and who disappears. But I couldn't keep my wife alive. Couldn't protect her from... He stopped abruptly, seemed to realize he was saying too much. My stomach dropped. From what? Nothing. Forget I said anything. Forget I said anything. No. I grabbed his arm, forcing him to face me. From what, Dante? What really happened to Maria? His expression shuddered. Completely. The vulnerable father disappeared, replaced by something cold and dangerous. You should go back to bed. Tell me the truth. Did someone kill her? Was it not an accident? Maya, I deserve to know what I'm part of. The words came out louder than intended, echoing in the quiet hallway. I'm living in your house, caring for your daughter, falling. I caught myself, but too late. Dante's eyes sharpened. Falling? Heat flooded my face. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're hiding something. Something dangerous. And if Isabella and I are in danger, you're not. He moved closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne mixed with exhaustion and fear. I would die before I let anything happen to either of you. Everything I do, every choice I make, it's to keep you safe. By lying to me, by protecting you from truths you don't need to carry. His hand came up, cupping my face with devastating gentleness. My world is dark, Maya, violent, built upon things that would horrify you. But this house, you and Isabella, that's separate, sacred. I won't let that darkness touch you. You can't compartmentalize like that. If Maria's death wasn't an accident, it was revenge. The words ripped from somewhere deep, raw and bleeding. Revenge for territory I took from the Volkov family. They couldn't touch me directly, so they went after what I loved most. Made it look like an accident so I couldn't retaliate without proof. The confirmation hit like a physical blow. Oh God. I spent 6 months hunting everyone involved, found them one by one. His voice dropped to something arctic. They died badly, Maya, slowly, and I don't regret a single moment of what I did to them. I should have been horrified, should have packed my bags and run. Instead, I found myself asking, does Isabella know that her mother was murdered? No. She thinks it was an accident. Bad luck, random violence. She'll never know the truth. His thumb brushed my cheekbone. And you won't tell her. You'll help her heal, help her build a life that isn't defined by what was taken from her. This is insane. Yes. He leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching mine. But you're not leaving. Are you? The question hung between us, enormous and inescapable. I thought of my tiny apartment in Little Italy, my crushing debt, the safe, predictable life I'd abandoned. Then I thought of Isabella's laugh, her small hand in mine, the way she'd started singing along when I hummed. Thought of Dante's rare smiles, his fierce protection of his daughter, the vulnerability he showed only in shadows. No, I whispered. I'm not leaving. Why? His voice was rough, desperate. You know what I am now, what I've done. Why stay? Because Isabella needs me. Because I gathered courage I didn't know I possessed. Because I'm falling in love with you, and that terrifies me, but not as much as the thought of walking away. The confession shattered. Something between us. Dante's control fractured completely. He kissed me with a hunger that stole thought, his mouth claiming mine like he was drowning and I was oxygen. I kissed him back with equal desperation, threading my fingers through his hair, pressing closer until there was no space between us. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes held something fierce and dangerous. This changes everything. I know. You're no longer just Isabella's caregiver. You're mine to protect. Mine to... He stopped, shook his head. I can't offer you normal, Maya. Can't give you safety or certainty or a life without shadows. Then don't. I met his gaze steadily. Offer me honesty instead. Real honesty. No more half-truths or careful omissions. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then, all right, complete transparency. But you might not like what you learn. I'll take that risk. He studied my face, searching for doubt, for fear, finding only determination. Tomorrow, after Isabella's therapy session, I'll tell you everything. We parted at my door, the kiss still burning on my lips, the promise of truth hanging heavy between us. I lay awake until dawn, trying to reconcile the man I was falling for with the violence he'd admitted to, trying to understand how I could love someone capable of such darkness. But love, I was learning, didn't ask for logic. It just demanded you jump and trust you'd find a way to breathe underwater. The next day passed with surreal normalcy. Isabella had her session with Dr. Chen, who was amazed by her progress. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it, she told me afterward. I've never seen such dramatic improvement in such a short time. What I was doing was loving a child who desperately needed to be loved. Nothing revolutionary, just presence and patience, and making her world feel safe again. Dante found me in the library that evening as promised. He'd shed his suit jacket, rolled his shirt sleeves to his elbows, and carried 2 glasses of whiskey. The good stuff, judging by the label. You're going to need this, he said, handing me a glass. We sat in leather chairs positioned by the fireplace. Outside, snow fell in thick flakes, blanketing the world in white silence. Inside, I was about to learn truths that would reshape everything. Where do you want me to start? Dante asked. The beginning. Your family. What you actually do. He took a long drink, gathering himself. The Catalano family has operated in Chicago for 4 generations. My great-grandfather came from Sicily in 1923, started with a restaurant and some shipping contracts. Nothing illegal at first, just immigrant hustle. When did that change? Prohibition. Suddenly there was money in smuggling, in providing what people wanted despite the law. My great-grandfather built relationships with other families, established territories, created networks that outlasted the law they were built to circumvent. I sipped my whiskey, letting it burn down my throat. And now? Now we control shipping at 3 major ports. We run legitimate businesses, restaurants, import companies, real estate, but also less legitimate ones. Gambling, loan operations, protection services. He met my eyes. We're what you'd call organized crime, though we prefer to think of it as providing services the market demands. That's one way to frame it. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I know how it sounds. I'm not asking you to approve, just to understand. And Maria? She knew all this? His expression softened. Maria grew up in this world. Her father ran operations in New York. She understood what she was marrying into, accepted it. He paused. Though she wanted me to transition toward legitimacy. Said she didn't want Isabella growing up around violence. What happened? The Volkov family Russian outfit operating on the south side, they wanted control of the waterfront warehouses I own. I refused. They pushed harder. We went to war for about 6 months. Quiet war, nothing that made headlines. His jaw tightened. I won, took 3 of their key operations, decimated their leadership. They couldn't touch me directly without starting a larger conflict with allied families. So they killed Maria. Hit and run at 2 a.m. on an empty road, made to look random, untraceable. The rage in his voice was cold, controlled. But I knew. I always knew. Spent the next 6 months hunting every person involved. Found them in cities across 3 states. Made sure they understood exactly why they were dying. The casual way he discussed murder made my skin go cold. How many? 11. No hesitation. No shame. I would have killed 100 more if they'd been involved. I should have been running. Should have been horrified beyond words. Instead, I found myself asking, does Isabella know any of this? God, no. And she never will. To her, I'm just her father. Loving, protective, maybe a little overprotective. But the rest, the violence, the blood that stays in the darkness where it belongs. You can't separate those parts of yourself forever, Dante. Eventually, Isabella will grow up. She'll ask questions. Then I'll answer them when she's ready. Not now, while she's still healing from losing her mother. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Everything I do, Maya, every choice I make, it's to protect her. To give her a life where she can be safe and happy, and never has to know how dark the world really is. And me? The question was quiet, vulnerable. What am I in all this? He stopped, seemed to struggle with words. You're the light that came into our darkness. You gave me back my daughter. Made me feel things I thought died with Maria. And now. His hand reached out, fingers threading through mine. Now I can't imagine this house without you in it. Can't imagine my life without hearing you sing to Isabella, without watching you read to her in the gardens, without ending my days talking to you about everything and nothing. My heart hammered against my ribs. That sounds like more than just gratitude. It is more. Much more. He pulled me forward until I was standing between his knees, his hands settling on my hips. I'm in love with you, Maya. Completely. Irrevocably. In a way that terrifies me because I've already lost one woman I loved. I won't survive losing another. Tears burned my eyes. Then don't lose me. Choose me. Choose us. Choose to build something that isn't defined by violence and revenge. It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple. I cupped his face, forcing him to meet my eyes. You can't bring Maria back. You can't undo what was done to her, but you can choose what happens next. You can choose to transition toward legitimate business, to step back from the violence, to give Isabella a father who comes home every night instead of one she might lose to, the same darkness that took her mother. That kind of transition takes years, decades maybe. Then start now, today. Make the first decision that prioritizes Isabella's future over your family's past. He stared at me for a long moment, conflict written across every line of his face. Then he kissed me again, softer this time, more tender. A promise instead of desperation. All right, he whispered against my lips. For you, for Isabella, for us, I'll start making changes. The following weeks were careful negotiation between what Dante was and what he wanted to become. He started meeting with lawyers about expanding legitimate business operations, had conversations with Adriano about gradually phasing out criminal enterprises, made plans that would take years to fully implement, but represented genuine change. Isabella continued blossoming. By Christmas, she was speaking in full sentences, asking questions, engaging with the world in ways that made Dante's eyes shine with grateful tears. We celebrated quietly, just the three of us, and Lucia with presents and music, and Isabella's delighted laughter filling the house. Dante gave me a necklace that night, a delicate chain with a single diamond pendant. "This belonged to my grandmother," he said as he fastened it around my neck. "She gave it to my mother, who gave it to me for the woman I'd marry." I turned in his arms, heart in my throat. "Dante, I'm not proposing. Not yet." He smiled, rare and genuine. "But I'm telling you my intentions. You're not temporary, Maya. You're forever. If you'll have me, I'll have you." The words felt like a vow. "All of you. Even the broken parts. Especially the broken parts," he corrected, and kissed me while snow fell outside, and Isabella slept peacefully upstairs, safe in a house that was slowly learning to choose light over darkness. But darkness, I would learn, doesn't release its grip easily. And men like Dante Catalano always have enemies waiting for the perfect moment to strike. That moment came on a Tuesday in January. I was with Isabella in her therapy session when Marco appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. "Miss Santos, you need to come with me. Now." Every instinct screamed that something was wrong. "What happened?" "Mr. Catalano will explain, but we need to move, both of you." He scooped up Isabella, who protested the sudden change in routine. "There's been a threat. We're going to a safe location until it's handled." "What kind of threat?" "The kind that kills people." His tone was flat, military. "Questions later. Movement now." The safe house was 40 minutes north, a nondescript building in Evanston, surrounded by enough security to guard a head of state. Marco ushered us inside, where Dante was already waiting. He looked haggard, dangerous, every inch the crime boss instead of the gentle father. "What's going on?" I demanded as soon as Isabella was settled with Lucia in another room. "The Bratva." He said the word like it was a curse. Russian organized crime. Apparently, the Volkov family had allies I didn't account for. They've been planning retaliation for the past year, waiting for the perfect moment. "What changed?" His eyes met mine, heavy with meaning. "They learned about you, about what you mean to me. Suddenly, I have new vulnerabilities they can exploit." Ice flooded my veins. "They're targeting me? They're targeting everyone I love." He pulled me against him, his arms like steel bands. "I've increased security everywhere. Your mother's facility has 6 guards now. This house is fortified. But until I can eliminate the threat permanently..." Eliminate. The word felt heavy. "You mean kill them?" "I mean protect what's mine." His voice went hard. "They threatened Isabella. Threatened you. I will burn their entire organization to the ground before I let them touch either of you." This was the Dante the world feared. Cold, calculating, capable of violence that wouldn't hesitate or show mercy. And standing in his arms, feeling his heart hammer against my cheek, I understood something fundamental. I didn't just love him despite his darkness. I loved him because he channeled that darkness toward protecting the people he loved, because his capacity for violence was matched only by his capacity for devotion. "How long do we have to stay here?" I asked quietly. "However long it takes." He pulled back, cupping my face. "I know this isn't what you signed up for. If you want to leave, take Isabella somewhere far from Chicago. I'll arrange it. I'll make sure you're both safe even if I'm not there. Stop trying to push me away." I met his eyes steadily. "I chose this. I chose you. I'm not running because things got dangerous. You should be terrified. I am terrified." The admission came easily, but I'm more terrified of losing you, of Isabella losing another parent, of walking away from this family we're building. Something cracked in. His expression. "You're going to get yourself killed. Then at least I'll die loving you." I pulled him down into a kiss that tasted like salt and fear and stubborn hope. "Come back to us. Do what you have to do, but come back. Always." He kissed me again, desperate and claiming. "I promise, Maya. I'll always come back to you." He left an hour later, surrounded by men whose faces promised violence. I watched from the window as black SUVs disappeared into Chicago's January night, carrying the man I loved toward a confrontation that could end everything. Isabella found me standing there, staring at nothing. Her small hand slipped into mine. "Daddy's going to fight the bad people?" She was too perceptive, too intelligent to lie to. "Yes, sweetheart. He's going to make sure we're safe." "Will he come back?" I knelt down, meeting her eyes so like her father's, so full of fear that had learned too young that people you love can disappear. He's going to try his hardest. Your daddy loves us very much. I love him too. She wrapped her arms around my neck. And I love you, Maya. Don't leave like Mama did. The words shattered me. I held her tight, breathing in strawberry shampoo and innocence that was already fraying at the edges. I'm not going anywhere, Isabella. I promise. Another promise I might not be able to keep. Another vow made in the face of impossible odds. We spent that night in the safe house. Isabella and I curled together in a too-large bed while Lucia kept watch from a chair nearby. I sang every lullaby I knew until Isabella finally slept. Then I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, praying to a God I wasn't sure I believed in anymore. Please, please bring him home. Please don't let Isabella lose another parent. Please don't make me learn to live in a world without him. The hours crawled. Dawn broke cold and gray over a city that held my heart in its violent hands. And somewhere out there, Dante Catalano was fighting to keep his promise. Fighting to come home to the family that loved him despite knowing exactly what kind of monster he was. Because some monsters protect instead of destroy. Some darkness exists solely to keep the light safe. And I'd chosen to love mine with everything I had. The call came at 6:13 in the morning. I know because I'd been watching the clock since 3 a.m., counting seconds like prayers. Marco's name flashed on my phone, and my heart stopped completely. He's alive, Marco said before I could speak, before I could shatter. Injured but alive. We're bringing him to the safe house. ETA 20 minutes. The phone slipped from my hands. Relief and terror warred in my chest, making it impossible to breathe. Alive. Dante was alive. What happened? Lucia was beside me, her face pale but composed. Always composed. He's hurt. They're bringing him here. I looked toward Isabella's room where she still slept, blissfully unaware. How bad? Marco didn't say. With Mr. Catalano, no news of death means it could have been worse. She squeezed my shoulder, a rare gesture of comfort. He's survived worse. He'll survive this. The 20 minutes felt like 20 hours. I paced the safe house like a caged animal, unable to sit, unable to think beyond the image of Dante bleeding somewhere while I'd been safe and useless. The sound of vehicles made me run to the window. 3 black SUVs pulled up, surrounding a 4th car with tinted windows. Men emerged, weapons visible, forming a protective perimeter. Then the center vehicle's door opened. Dante climbed out under his own power, which sent relief flooding through me. But even from a distance, I could see the blood on his white shirt, the careful way he moved, the exhaustion carved into every line of his body. I was at the door before Marco could open it, before anyone could stop me. Dante's eyes found mine immediately, and something in his expression cracked. Maya. Just my name, rough and broken. I crashed into him, careful of his obvious injuries but unable to stop myself. His arms came around me, solid and real and alive. He buried his face in my hair, breathing me in like oxygen. I thought, my voice broke. I thought you might not come back. I promised. His grip tightened. I'll always come back to you. We stood like that for a long moment, neither of us willing to let go. Finally, Adriano cleared his throat. Brother, you're bleeding on the lady. Dante pulled back, and I saw the damage properly. A gash along his temple, blood dried in his dark hair, his shirt torn and soaked with more blood than I wanted to think about, bruises already forming on his jaw, his knuckles split and raw. How bad? I demanded, slipping into nurse mode automatically. Training overriding emotion. Flesh wound. Ribs are probably cracked. Nothing vital. He winced as I probed his side gently. I've had worse. That's not comforting. I guided him inside toward the couch. Sit. Let me look at you properly. While I examined him with professional efficiency, cataloging injuries and determining what needed immediate attention, Adriano provided the summary I hadn't asked for but needed to hear. The Bratva made their move on 3 fronts simultaneously. They hit one of our warehouses, targeted the restaurant in Little Italy, and sent a team here. His voice was flat, matter of fact. They expected to overwhelm us with numbers. They didn't account for Dante's preparation. How many? I asked. Not sure I wanted the answer. Dead? 12? Captured? 5. Dante's voice was cold. The ones who survived will provide information about their leadership structure. Then they'll disappear. The casual discussion of murder should have horrified me. A year ago it would have. But I'd changed, adapted, learned to live with shades of gray I'd once seen only in black and white. And the threat? I pressed antiseptic-soaked gauze to the gash on his temple. He didn't flinch. Is it over? The immediate threat, yes. But the Bratva's leadership is still intact. This was just the first wave. He caught my hand, stilling my movements. Which is why you and Isabella need to leave Chicago. Today, I have a property in Vermont, completely off the grid. You'll be safe there while I finish this. No. His eyes narrowed. Maya. No, I repeated, more firmly. We're not running. We're not leaving you to face this alone. I'm not asking. I'm telling you. His voice went hard, commanding, the tone that probably made grown men fear for their lives. You'll be on a plane in 3 hours. Isabella just got her father back. I'm not taking him away from her again. I returned to cleaning his wounds with more force than strictly necessary. And you need medical attention beyond what I can provide here. Those ribs need x-rays. That head wound might need stitches. I have doctors. You have me. I met his eyes, letting him see my resolve. I'm a nurse, remember? I can handle cracked ribs and lacerations. What I can't handle is explaining to your daughter why her father sent her away when he promised he'd always come back. Adriano made a sound that might have been approval. She has a point, brother. Isabella needs stability, not more upheaval. Dante's jaw clenched, muscles jumping beneath bruised skin. For a moment, I thought he'd override me anyway, use his power and authority to force compliance. Then something in him softened. You're going to be the death of me, he muttered. Not if I have anything to say about it. I resumed cleaning his wounds. Now tell me the truth. How bad are your ribs? 3 cracked, maybe 4. I've had worse. Stop saying that. My hands trembled slightly as I worked. The adrenaline was fading, leaving me shaky and too aware of how close I'd come to losing him. Just because you've survived worse doesn't mean this isn't serious. His hand came up, catching mine. I'm sorry for putting you through this. For bringing you into a world where 3 a.m. phone calls mean someone might be dead. I chose this world. I squeezed his fingers. I chose you, all of you, even the parts that terrify me. You shouldn't have to choose between love and safety. No one gets both. I leaned down, pressing my forehead to his carefully. But I'd rather have you in danger than safety without you. He kissed me then, gentle despite the split lip, the taste of blood and fear and desperate relief. When we broke apart, Adriano had diplomatically disappeared, leaving us alone in the aftermath of violence. The Bratva leadership, I said quietly. What happens now? Now I send a message they can't ignore. His voice went cold again, distant. I've spent 12 hours hunting their people. By tomorrow, I'll know where their leadership hides. By next week, the organization will be decimated. More killing. Yes. No apology. No justification. Just acknowledgement of what he was, what he'd always be. I should have argued, should have begged him to find another way. Instead, I found myself asking, will it be enough? Will it finally be over? This threat will end, but there will always be others. That's the reality of my world, Maya. One enemy falls, another rises, it's endless. Then make it end. The words came out fierce, demanding. You said you'd transition toward legitimate business, that you'd build something better for Isabella, so do it. Really do it, not just plan for someday. It's not that simple. Stop saying that. My voice rose, frustration and fear bleeding through. You keep telling me how complicated it is, how much time it takes, how many obligations you have. But Isabella is 6 years old, Dante. She just lost 14 months of her childhood to grief and trauma. How much more will she lose to your war? The words hit him like physical blows. I watched him flinch, watched the truth of them sink in. I don't know how to walk away, he admitted quietly. This life, it's all I know. My father ran these operations. His father before him. It's legacy, duty. It's a cage. I cupped his face, careful of bruises. And you're choosing to stay in it when the door is open. When you have a daughter who needs a living father more than she needs a powerful one. Silence stretched between us. Outside, dawn was breaking over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. A new day. A chance to choose differently. Finally, Dante spoke. What if I can't be the man you need me to be? What if I try to walk away, and the violence follows anyway? Then we handle it together. I kissed him softly. But at least you'll be trying. At least Isabella will grow up knowing her father chose her over power. And you? His voice dropped. What do you choose? You. Always you. The truth of it rang clear. I choose you and Isabella and this impossible family we're building. I choose to believe you can be more than what you were born to be." Something shifted in his expression. Resolution settling over exhaustion and pain. "All right. After I handle the Bratva leadership, after this immediate threat is eliminated, I start the real transition. No more delays. No more excuses. Promise me." "I promise." He pulled me onto his lap carefully, mindful of his injuries. "God help me, I promise." A sound from the doorway made us both turn. Isabella stood there in her pajamas. Mr. Flopsy clutched to her chest, her eyes huge and frightened. "Daddy?" Her voice was small. "You're hurt." Dante's entire demeanor transformed. The crime boss disappeared, replaced by a father desperate to comfort his child. "I'm okay, Principessa. Just some bumps and bruises." She moved closer, examining him with the same careful attention I'd used. "There's blood. Not mine. Well, some of it's mine. But I'm fine, I promise. You promised you'd come back." Tears filled her eyes. "I was scared you wouldn't." "Oh, baby." Dante lifted her onto his lap despite the pain it must have caused, gathering her close. "I will always come back to you. Always. Nothing in this world could keep me from you." She buried her face in his chest, small shoulders shaking. "Mama didn't come back." The words shattered something in the room. Dante's eyes met mine over Isabella's head, devastation written in every line of his face. "I know," he said hoarsely. "Mama couldn't come back, and that wasn't fair. But I'm here, and Maya's here, and we're not going anywhere. Promise?" She looked up at him with those dark eyes that held too much understanding for a 6-year-old. "I promise." He kissed her forehead. "Cross my heart. I'm not going anywhere." I watched them hold each other. This father and daughter who'd both lost too much, who were slowly learning how to build something new from wreckage. And I understood with perfect clarity that this was what mattered. Not the violence, not the power, not the legacy stretching back generations. Just this. 2 people who loved each other, and me, somehow woven into their story, helping them heal. The following week was careful recovery and quiet planning. Dante's ribs healed slowly, though he pushed himself harder than any doctor would recommend. The information extracted from captured Bratva members led to addresses, names, hierarchies. I tried not to think about what extracted meant. Some things I still couldn't witness, even if I understood their necessity. True to his word, Dante also began the real transition. Meetings with lawyers about legitimate business expansion. Conversations with Adriano about selling off criminal operations to allied families. Making moves that would take years to complete but represented genuine change. "It won't be overnight," he told me one evening while Isabella slept upstairs. We sat in the library, his arm around me, my head on his shoulder. "Some obligations can't be broken quickly without starting wars. But I'm beginning. Really beginning. That's all I ask." I tilted my head to look at him. "That you try. For her. For us." His hand cupped my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone. "Marry me." The words hung in the air between us. Not a question, a statement of intention. "Is that a proposal?" My heart hammered. "It's a promise." He shifted, pulling a small box from his pocket. "I know the timing is terrible. I know we're still in the middle of this mess. But I don't want to wait. Don't want another day to pass without making it official." He opened the box to reveal a ring that stole my breath. A sapphire surrounded by diamonds, antique and beautiful. "This was my grandmother's," he explained. "She gave it to my mother, who gave it to me for the woman who'd complete my family." His eyes held mine. "You brought my daughter back to life. You made me believe I could be more than what I was. You chose us despite every reason to run. Marry me, Maya. Be Isabella's. Mother officially. Be mine." Tears blurred my vision. "Yes. God, yes." He slid the ring onto my finger, and it fit perfectly, like it had been waiting for me all along. Then he kissed me with a tenderness that contradicted everything I knew about him, everything the world saw. This was Dante Catalano beneath the violence and power. Gentle, loving, capable of devotion that consumed everything in its path. "I love you," I whispered against his lips. "I love you more." He pulled back, smiling rare and genuine. "We'll do it right. Wedding, family, everything. As soon as the Bratva situation is handled. I don't need big. I just need you. You'll have both." Another kiss. Deeper this time. "I'm going to give you everything, Maya. Everything you deserve and more." The final confrontation with the Bratva came on a Friday night. I didn't witness it, wouldn't have been allowed to even if I'd tried, but I heard the aftermath in phone calls, in Adriano's grim satisfaction, in the way. Tension finally released from Dante's shoulders. "It's done," he told me simply when he returned home at dawn. No blood this time, no visible injuries, just exhaustion and something like relief. The leadership is eliminated. Their organization is fractured. The threat is over. I should have asked for details, should have demanded to know exactly what eliminated meant. Instead, I just held him while he stood in our bedroom, because I'd moved into his suite a week ago and let himself believe it was finally over. "No more midnight calls?" I asked against his chest. "I can't promise that, but this particular war is finished." He pulled back, cupping my face. "And I've accelerated the transition timeline. Adriano will handle most operations while I focus on legitimate business. By the time Isabella is 10, I want to be completely clean. 4 years. 4 years, he confirmed. "I know it's not fast enough. It's a start." I kissed him. "It's choosing us. That's what matters." We stood like that until light began filtering through windows, holding each other in the quiet, learning how to breathe in a world where survival wasn't measured in violent hours. The wedding happened in spring, 3 months after Dante's proposal, after the immediate threats had faded, after Isabella had started first grade at a school that understood her needs. We married in the gardens of the Catalano estate, surrounded by flowers and people who'd earned Dante's trust over years of loyalty. Isabella served as flower girl, wearing a dress the exact color of lilacs, her dark curls crowned with real flowers. She took her job seriously, scattering petals with focused precision. When she reached the altar where Dante and I waited, she looked up at me with those eyes so like her father's. "You're really going to be my mama now?" she whispered. "If that's okay with you. It's perfect." She threw her arms around me. "I love you, Maya. I love you too, sweetheart." Over her head, my eyes met Dante's. He was crying, I realized, tears streaming down his face while he watched his daughter embrace the woman who'd become her mother. The ceremony was brief. No religious officiant. Dante's relationship with the church was complicated, just a judge who'd known his father and words we'd written ourselves. Dante promised honesty, even when it hurt. Protection always. And love that would outlast every darkness he'd known. I promised to stay through the storms, to help build a family that wasn't defined by violence, and to love him exactly as he was. When we kissed, Isabella cheered loud enough to make the small gathering laugh. Adriano, standing as best man, wiped his eyes discreetly. The reception was simple. Good food, better wine, music that drew people onto a dance floor set up on the grass. I danced with Dante, with Isabella, with Adriano, who moved with surprising grace. As the sun set and light strung through trees flickered on, Dante found me watching Isabella play with other children, the daughter of Lucia's cousin, some kids from her school. "She's happy," he said quietly, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "She is." I leaned back against his chest. "We all are." "Thank you." "For what?" "For diving into my darkness and deciding to stay. For loving my daughter like she's yours. For believing I could be more than what I was." His voice went rough. "For saving us both." I turned in his arms, looking up at the man I'd married. Still dangerous, still capable of violence, but choosing every day to be something more. "You saved yourselves," I said. "I just made it safe to try." He kissed me as the first stars emerged over the Chicago skyline. Around us, people celebrated, music played, and Isabella's laughter rang clear and bright. This wasn't the life I'd planned when I'd walked into room 318 at Chicago Memorial. Wasn't the safe, predictable future I'd imagined for myself. It was better. Messier. More. Complicated. Built on foundations that still had cracks, but real in a way nothing else had ever been. 6 months after the wedding, Isabella spoke her first full paragraph without prompting. We were in the garden, the three of us, watching butterflies dance among late summer flowers. "I used to think Mama leaving was my fault," she said quietly. Like maybe if I'd been better, she would have stayed. Dante and I both froze. This was the first time she'd voluntarily brought up Maria since that night she'd woken crying. "Oh, sweetheart, no." I knelt beside her. "Your mama didn't leave because of anything you did. She didn't want to leave at all. I know that now." She looked at me with those impossibly wise eyes. "Because you stayed, and Maya stays even when things are hard, so I know Mama would have stayed too, if she could." Dante made a sound like he'd been struck. He dropped to his knees, gathering Isabella into his arms. Your mama loved you more than anything in the world, more than her own life. She would have given anything to stay with you. I know, Daddy. She patted his cheek. And now I have you and Maya. That's pretty good too. Pretty good didn't begin to cover it. But from a 6-year-old who'd spent 14 months silent with grief, it was everything. That night, after Isabella was asleep, Dante found me on our balcony. The same balcony where we'd almost kissed a year ago, where everything had changed. I never thought I'd have this again, he said, pulling me against him. A family. A home that feels alive instead of like a mausoleum. Someone to share it all with. You deserve it. I don't. But you've given it to me anyway. He kissed my temple. Every day, I wake up expecting to learn this was a dream, that you'll realize what I am and leave. I know what you are. I turned in his arms. You're a father who'd burn the world down to protect his daughter. A man who's choosing to be better even when it's hard. Someone who loves, as with his whole heart even though it terrifies him. And a killer. Don't forget that part. I haven't forgotten anything, Dante. I met his eyes steadily. I see all of you. The darkness and the light, and I choose all of it. He stared at me for a long moment, then pulled out his phone, showing me a document. Sign this. I scanned the legal language. An adoption petition. For Isabella. I've been working on it for months, he explained, waiting for the right moment. You're already her mother in every way that matters. This just makes it official. Tears blurred my vision as I scrolled through page after page of legal terminology that all meant the same thing. Isabella would be mine. Legally, permanently, irrevocably. There's a line that needs your signature, he said softly. Right there. Isabella Maria Santos Catalano, if you approve of the name. It's perfect. My hand shook as I signed. When does it go through? Lawyer files it Monday. Judge owes me favors, it'll be fast-tracked. By next month, officially, you'll be her mother. I couldn't speak, could only lean into him and let tears fall while he held me in the city stretched below us, holding our past and our future in its violent hands. 2 years after I'd first walked into room 318 at Chicago Memorial, I stood in Isabella's bedroom doorway, watching her sleep. She was 8 now, thriving in a school that understood neurodivergent learners, still autistic, still needing accommodations and understanding, but happy, whole, living instead of just surviving. The nightmares were rare now. Maybe once every few months, and even then, she'd let us comfort her without the hours of crying that had once been standard. She'd started piano lessons, was learning Italian from her nonna Dante's mother, who'd flown in from Sicily and wept when she met me. Grateful someone had brought her son and granddaughter back from the darkness. She had friends, real friends who understood that sometimes she needed a space, that loud noises overwhelmed her, that her way of playing might look different but was just as valid. She called me Mama, had for over a year now, since the adoption finalized. And every single time, it made my heart swell with gratitude for the impossible journey that had brought us here. Arms wrapped around me from behind. Dante, fresh from the shower, smelling of expensive soap and home. She's getting so big, he murmured. She is. I leaned back against him. Remember when she wouldn't even look at people? I remember thinking I'd lost her forever. That grief had taken both the women I loved. He turned me to face him. Then you appeared in that hospital room with your song and your patience and somehow brought her back. We brought her back together. No. He cupped my face. You brought us both back, Maya. From the moment you sang to her, everything changed. You gave me hope when I'd forgotten what that felt like. I rose on my toes to kiss him, tasting forever, in the gentle press of lips. When we broke apart, his expression had shifted to something serious. I have news, he said. Adriano finalized the last sale this morning. As of today, the Catalano family is officially out of organized crime. The words didn't register immediately. What? Every operation, every territory, every illegal enterprise sold, transferred, or shut down. We're clean, Maya. Really, truly clean. His smile was tentative. It took 3 years instead of 4, but it's done. Tears burned my eyes. You kept your promise. I always keep my promises to you. He pulled me closer. There will still be security. Some enemies don't forget. But the active participation, the violence, the midnight calls about territory wars, that's over. I'm just a businessman now. Boring, legitimate, paying taxes. You'll never be boring. I laughed through tears. But this God, Dante, this is everything. Not everything. His hand moved to my stomach, resting there, saying with careful intent, "Not quite yet." I stared at him. "How did you? You've been sick every morning for a week. You think I don't notice everything about you?" His eyes held wonder and fear in equal measure. "Are you?" "I think so. I was going to take a test tomorrow, wanted to be sure before." I stopped. "Are you happy?" "I know we haven't discussed." He kissed me silent, deep and claiming and full of emotions too large for words. When he finally pulled back, there were tears on his cheeks. "Happy doesn't begin to cover it," he said roughly. "Terrified, yes. Worried about bringing another child into this world. But happy, Maya. So goddamn happy I can't breathe." We stood like that, wrapped in each other, while our daughter slept peacefully down the hall and our future grew in my belly. Two broken people who'd found each other in a hospital room, who'd chosen love despite every reason to run, who'd built a family from grief and violence and stubborn hope. "I love you," I whispered, more than I knew it was possible to love someone. "I love you more." He pressed his forehead to mine. "You saved my daughter. You saved me. And now," his hand splayed across my stomach, "now you're giving us even more than I ever imagined asking for." From Isabella's room came a small sound. We both turned, watching as she stirred, eyes fluttering open. "Mama?" Her voice was sleepy. "Daddy?" "We're here, Principessa," Dante called softly. She padded out to us, all wild curls and rumpled pajamas. "I had a good dream, about butterflies and music and—" She stopped, staring at us with sudden focus. "Why are you both crying?" "Happy tears," I said, kneeling to her level. "We have some news. Good news." "What kind of good news?" Dante knelt beside me, and we exchanged a glance. Too early to tell her about the pregnancy, maybe. But the hope in her eyes deserved something. "The kind that means I get to be home more," Dante said. "A lot more. No more business trips or late meetings. Just us, here, together." Isabella's face lit up. "Really? Every day?" "Every single day." She threw her arms around both of us, and we held her between us, this child who'd brought us together, who'd taught us both that healing was possible, that love was stronger than grief. "This is the best family ever," Isabella declared with the absolute certainty of an 8-year-old. And looking at Dante over her head, seeing my own joy reflected in his dark eyes, I had to agree. We weren't perfect. We'd never be a fairy tale. But we were real, complicated, messy, built on foundations that had required years to stabilize. But ours, completely, irrevocably ours. I jumped into dangerous water to save a drowning child 2 years ago. In return, she and her father had pulled me from depths I hadn't even realized I was drowning in. Sometimes salvation looks like a crying child on a hospital bed. Sometimes it looks like a dangerous man willing to change his entire world. Sometimes it looks like choosing love even when logic screams to run. We were all three of those things, saved and savers in equal measure, and in the end, that was more than enough. 5 years later, I stood in the kitchen of our home, not the mansion in Kenilworth, but the house we'd bought in Evanston after Dante's full transition. Smaller, warmer, with a backyard where children could play without armed guards watching from shadows. The morning sun streamed through windows that overlooked a garden Isabella had designed herself. At 13 now, she developed a passion for botany, could name every flower and explain their optimal growing conditions with the same focused intensity she'd once applied to stacking blocks. "Mama," 3-year-old Luca barreled into the kitchen, his dark curls so like his father's flying wild around his face. "Izzy says I can't help with her science project, but I can help. I'm a good helper." Behind him, Isabella appeared, tablet in hand, rolling, her eyes with the exasperation only a teenage sister could muster. "He's 3, Mama. He'll destroy the ecosystem balance I've been cultivating for 6 weeks." "I won't destroy it." Luca's lower lip trembled. "I'm very careful." I knelt down, smoothing his unruly hair. "How about you help me make breakfast instead? Izzy needs to focus on her project, but you and I can make Daddy's favorite pancakes." The tears that had been threatening disappeared immediately. "With chocolate chips?" "All the chocolate chips." Crisis averted, Luca climbed onto his step stool at the counter, already narrating his pancake-making plans with the endless chatter that was so different from his sister's childhood silence. Isabella returned to her project, visible through the kitchen window as she knelt in the garden, making careful notes. She still didn't love loud noises or sudden changes, still needed her routines and her specific accommodations, but she'd learned to navigate the world in her own way, had found friends who valued her uniqueness, teachers who understood that different minds worked beautifully when given the right support. Arms wrapped around my waist from behind. Dante, dressed casually in jeans and a t-shirt, the suit-wearing crime boss now just a memory. "Good morning, Mrs. Catalano." "Mr. Catalano." I leaned back against him, watching our son arrange chocolate chips with absolute seriousness. Someone woke up early. Couldn't sleep. Too excited. He kissed my neck. Today's the day. Today was the day. The final paperwork for his last legitimate business acquisition. The day Dante Catalano became just another successful businessman, with nothing tying him to the darkness that had once defined him. "How does it feel?" I asked quietly. "Terrifying. Freeing." He paused. "Right. It feels right." Luca looked up from his chocolate chip arrangement. "Daddy, are you sad?" "No, Figlio. I'm very happy." Dante moved to ruffle his son's hair. "Why would I be? Sad? Because you look like you want to cry. But Mama says happy tears are okay." Out of the mouths of toddlers, Dante's eyes met mine over Luca's head, and I saw the truth there. He was emotional about this final step, this complete severing from the life his father and grandfather had built. "Mama's right," Dante said, lifting Luca into his arms. "Happy tears are very okay, and I'm the happiest I've ever been." Through the window, Isabella waved, gesturing for us to come look at something. We moved as a unit, Dante carrying Luca, me grabbing my coffee into the garden where Isabella knelt beside a collection of mason jars. "Look," she pointed to one jar where a chrysalis had begun to crack. "The monarch is emerging. I've been waiting 3 weeks for this." We watched in silence as the butterfly struggled free, wings wet and crumpled. Isabella narrated the process with scientific precision, explaining metamorphosis and emergence, her voice steady and confident in a way that still made my heart swell with pride. "It's beautiful," I said when the butterfly finally spread its wings. "It had to break its own cocoon," Isabella observed. "No one could help it. That's how it gets strong enough to fly." Beside me, Dante went still. I knew he heard the metaphor, the unintended wisdom in his daughter's words. He'd broken his own cocoon over these past years, struggling free of legacy and expectation, and now he could finally fly. "Very wise, Principessa," he said softly. She looked up at him with those dark eyes that still saw everything. "Like you, Daddy. You broke free too. Sometimes she was too perceptive. Sometimes she understood things we'd tried to shield her from. But mostly, she was just Isabella, brilliant, autistic, loved beyond measure." "Yes," Dante agreed. "Like me, that evening, after the final papers were signed, after Dante had spent hours in his office finalizing the end of his old life, we gathered on the back porch. Luca was already asleep, exhausted from a day of helping. Isabella sat on the steps, sketching her butterfly in meticulous detail. "No regrets?" I asked Dante, threading my fingers through his. "Not a single one." He looked at our daughter, then at the house where our son slept. "This you, them, this life, it's more than I ever deserved, more than I ever imagined wanting. You deserve it all." I kissed him softly. "Every bit of happiness we've built." Isabella looked up from her drawing. "Are you guys being sappy again?" "Extremely sappy," Dante confirmed. She wrinkled her nose, but I saw the smile tugging at her lips. "Well, stop it. It's embarrassing." "You love it," I teased. "Maybe a little." She returned to her sketch. "But don't tell anyone. I have a reputation to maintain." Dante laughed, the sound rich and genuine and free. This was who he'd become, a father who laughed with his children, a husband who chose love over power, a man who dismantled an empire to build something better. We sat there as stars emerged over Evanston, 3 people who'd found each other in the darkness and chosen to walk toward the light. 4. Counting Luca sleeping inside. 5. If you counted the life growing inside me again, another secret we'd share with Isabella soon. The past 5 years had been transformation, learning to live without violence lurking at the edges, watching Dante become someone new while still being fundamentally himself, raising children who'd never know their father as anything but loving and present. "What are you thinking?" Dante asked, pulling me closer. "That I'd do it all again." I looked up at him. "Every terrifying choice, every impossible moment, I'd make them all again to get here. Even the part where you signed your life away to a crime boss. Especially that part." I kissed him. "Best decision I ever made." Isabella made gagging sounds from the steps. "Seriously, you two. Get a room. This is our house," Dante pointed out. Every room is. Ours. She laughed, and the sound still made my breath catch. That laugh had taken months to hear the first time. Now it came easily, frequently, the sound of a child who felt safe in her world. Later, after Isabella had gone inside and we sat alone under the stars, Dante spoke quietly. Thank you. For what? For seeing who I could be before I saw it myself. For believing a monster could choose to be a man. His voice went rough. For loving me anyway. You were never a monster, Dante. Just someone trapped in a life you didn't know how to leave. And now? Now you're free. I rested my head on his shoulder. We all are. The butterfly Isabella had watched emerge that morning would fly away soon. Would navigate the world on wings that had been worth the struggle. We'd done the same, broken free of our cocoons, emerged, transformed, learned to fly. The journey from that hospital room to this porch had been impossible, dangerous, built on choices that defied logic. But, looking at the life we'd created, the family we'd become, the peace we'd earned through years of struggle, I wouldn't change a single moment. Sometimes salvation requires jumping into darkness and trusting you'll find light on the other side. We'd jumped, we'd found each other, and we'd built something beautiful from the wreckage. That was more than enough. That was everything. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.